Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, let's talk some boxing. So we're going to look at exciting fights, boring fights, and mismatches. We're going to look at criteria that can help you in advance determine if a fight is going to be exciting, boring, or a mismatch. So let's start. First things first, we look at weight. Weight plays a big role in how a fight can actually turn out. Now, there are some people who are just immensely talented and skilled and well crafted, and that is not a problem for them. But generally speaking, weight is a big issue. And I'll give you an example. Sekio Bika versus Adonis Stevenson. Sounds good on paper, but the truth is Sekio Bika was coming up in weight to a higher weight class, which was the light heavyweight division, to fight the best in the weight class. He wasn't acclimatized to the weight, nothing like that. And he was going against a guy who, point number two, style. Style is very important to determine if a fight is going to be exciting, a mismatch, or boring. And in this case, Sekio Bika lost to a boxer puncher. And he's going up in weight to fight a bigger, stronger boxer puncher in Adonis Stevenson. So I expected it to be a mismatch, and it was exactly that. And the reason mainly being that Sekio Bika's greatest strength is roughing up his opponent. He fights bending the Marcus of Queensberry rules. So when you can't do that against a bigger, stronger fighter, you get dropped twice in a fight that you unanimously you lose. It's a mismatch. Another factor besides weight and style is skills. I'll use the same point with Adonis Stevenson and Sekio Bika. Adonis Stevenson is a lot more skilled than Sekio Bika. Sekio Bika is a lot more crafty. Of course, crafty and skilled are two different things. He's a lot more crafty than Adonis, but he couldn't get on the inside to really employ his craft on Adonis because Adonis has a great reach advantage. So I knew it was never going to happen. He was not going to be able to rough up Adonis, and even if he tried, Adonis is just way too strong for him to do that. So I knew that was a mismatch. Even though they were big names in boxing, I knew it was a mismatch. Okay? So we've covered weight, style, and skill. Here's another factor. Another factor besides weight, style, and skill is the records. You look at Adonis's record, much better than Sekio Bika. So not only that, but Adonis was much more highly ranked in the pound-for-pound listing than Sekio Bika. So we see that this would have to be a mismatch. The other factor is record. Sekio Bika has a less impressive record, even though he has great opposition in his record. He has great opponents in his record. His record is not as outstanding in terms of winning than Adonis Stevenson. However, his level of opposition is much higher than Adonis Stevenson's level of opposition, and that's something we need to keep in mind. So that is the other point. Level of opposition, point number 6. Point number 7, which is equally as important as level of opposition, is the fact that Sekio Bika came off a loss. And coming off a loss is called history. So point number 7 is the history of the fighter. Now let's employ those 7 points into some other fights which were just mismatches or they were exciting fights. So if we look at Marcos Maidana versus Adrien Broner, in terms of styles, it was an interesting matchup. Marcos Maidana has never been in a dull fight. All his fights have been exciting, and Adrien Broner is a power puncher boxer who always has exciting fights as well. You put the two together, that's great. So styles was good. 2, Adrien Broner won the WBA World Championship at that weight class after moving up in the weight class. So he had gotten somewhat, to a certain degree, acclimatized to the weight class. And Marcos Maidana had 3 fights before Adrien Broner, knocking out everyone, making it very exciting. So weight wasn't the problem. Point number 3, skills. Adrien Broner was the more skilled fighter, but Marcos Maidana has relentless pressure, and his style is interesting. And we wanted to see what happens when those two styles clash. So therefore, in terms of skills, even though Adrien Broner had slightly greater skills than Marcos Maidana, we didn't really know how the outcome would come, even though most people favored Adrien Broner to win against Marcos Maidana. Point number 5, records. Marcos Maidana had a great record, but Adrien Broner was undefeated, and he was plowing through everyone. So, again, interesting. We thought probably the nod would go to Adrien Broner, and the truth of the matter is the nod went to Marcos Maidana in that fight. Even more interesting, and what makes us more intrigued when we look, is the history of both fighters. Marcos Maidana had fought greats like Eric Morales, Amir Khan, Josecito Lopez, Victor Ortiz. He's been in wars and battles, and he hardly ever gets scratched. And he always hurts his opponent, always damages them, makes something bad happen to them. So his history was great. And then Adrien Broner in the lightweight division had fights with DeMarco. He had fights with Ponce de Leon, and so on. And he was very impressive in those weight classes. So this made for an interesting thing. And the last point, of course, is that both fighters were coming off of wins. So this is an exciting match. However, when we talk about mismatches, we can always think about this fight. When we think of mismatches, the first thing that comes to mind for me is this fight. Okay, this was suck salt fight. This was not a fight you wanted to go see. Okay, Danny Garcia's style was a counterpunching style. That's like kryptonite to Rod Salka. 2, Danny Garcia was 2 weight classes up from Rod Salka with a catch weight at 143 pounds. He was bigger, stronger, the more power puncher, and he was more, point number 3, skilled. So we had styles clashes, weight problems, skill. That's 4 points. Styles, they clashed. Then number 5, Danny Garcia had much better opposition than Rod Salka, and he was much more highly ranked, which means his record was better, his history was better, and his, point number 7, his level of opposition was better. This was a mismatch written all over it, and led precedent to Pacquiao fighting Chris Algieri, which to me was just ridiculous. And then on top of that, now I hear Amir Khan wants to fight Chris Algieri, which is another ridiculous mismatch. So when we talk about mismatches, you know, these are some of the examples. When we talk about boring fights, an example of a boring fight would be where you had 2 styles which were counterpunchers. So they're waiting on one another to counterpunch one another all day, all night. And that can only lead to a boring fight. And example of that I saw, which you guys don't know too much about, but is Druds versus Krzysztof Wladosik. And man, that was the most boring fight I ever seen, because Wladosik wasn't doing nothing and Druds wasn't doing nothing, and the feints didn't make any sense to me. So that to me was a very boring fight. But of course, boxers use a lot of feinting, and if you understand boxing a lot, it can be very exciting to you if you're not a casual fan. So sometimes fights look good on paper, but always pay attention to the following things. Look at the weight of the opponent. Is he in the same division? Is he moving up? If he is moving up, is his skills, point number 2, are they better than the opponent that he's facing? 3, is he ranked higher than the opponent? That is his record better than his opponent? Point number 4, is his history, when you look at it, has he won, has he lost? Point number 5, the level of opposition this person has faced. If they're an inexperienced fighter, it doesn't matter if they have an undefeated record, who have they fought? Point number 6, the skills of the fighter. That can compensate for a lot of things. But if the guy he's fighting is more skilled, then it could lead to a tremendous mismatch, especially if the skill level and the distance between skill levels is very vast. And the last point, point number 7, the styles. If you have styles which just don't mesh together very well, you can have a very boring fight, or you can have a mismatch. Alright, you guys, have a great day. Bear these things in mind when you hear of a fight coming up. Look into the fighters. The more you look into boxing and more into fighters, research them, look at their videos. You can make some sense. Oh, okay, I see what this fight is going to be like, because you've been able to evaluate the separate fighters. Do your homework, and you will know what fights make sense and what fights don't. Learn about your fighters, and then you'll know. Guys, have a great day.